Good evening, everyone. We are so happy that you are joining us today. I'm Misty Jones. I'm your city librarian, and it thrills me to be here with everybody. Want to give you a little recap of the last year of the library life. It has definitely been a challenging year for everyone, including us, but we have done some really phenomenal things this year. Just to give you an idea, we still checked out over almost 3 million items. We had 230,000 items checked out digitally. We collected over 225,000 ballots this year during the election. Had 22,000 library cards issued. We did some incredible things with activity kits to make sure that we were still engaging our community. And we distributed over 33,000 of those at food distribution sites throughout San Diego. Had 16,000 virtual sessions for Do Your Homework at the Library. 602 hotspots were circulated. And we did 743 virtual programs that reached over 2,700 participants. So we've been really, really busy this year and have done some really amazing things. Library Next continued virtually. We started a new program, Discover and Go, which has seen phenomenal success in the little over a month that it has been in existence. In fact, in the first week, we had over 1,000 reservations for museums and culture events throughout San Diego with that. The Rebellious Miss Breed continues to be an incredible program. We've had over 50 programs and reached over 1,200 people attending those programs. So that has been incredible. But one of the things that we did this year that I want to highlight is during the pandemic, one of the things that we really discovered was the digital divide was greater during the pandemic for those who did not have access. And so we really wanted to do something to address that. The city started a program called SD Access for All. And the foundation, the San Diego Public Library Foundation, assisted us with this program, not only in just making sure that we were giving people access, but to really make sure that we were able to continue to provide access for those students who were participating in Library Next, who were Read San Diego students. And so we gave out, with the foundation's assistance, over 330 computers to students this year, computers that they did not have. Maybe the whole family was sharing one computer, and these students got a computer of their own, and that's a game changer and just has made a tremendous impact. SD Access for All continues with the hotspot program, continues to be a huge success. And I just want to read, I asked for some stories from the branch libraries about the impact of this program. And I just want to read one of those to you that I got from the City Heights branch library from one of their staff. And it says, at City Heights this past summer, a family came to the library. The dad had lost his job due to COVID, and they were living out of their car as they sought and transitioned into more permanent housing. They had heard about the mobile Wi-Fi program on the radio and wanted to find out more. They checked out the Wi-Fi hotspots and went on their way, and they were very grateful. After they came to return the devices, the mom was in tears as she told me that the Wi-Fi access allowed her children to attend school, helped her husband look for employment and apartments, and allowed them to feel more at home by streaming videos and music. I really appreciate this program and have been grateful that we can assist our patrons and be a light for them in these uncertain and troubled times. And I wanted to highlight that because I think that's what we've been in libraries, is especially this last 2 years, is we've been a light for people in troubled and uncertain times. And we're proud of that, and we're going to continue to do that. And so I'm so grateful that you are all here tonight to get to meet a few of our amazing staff and let them talk to you about their journey and their leadership in the library system. And so I want to turn it over to Patrick Stewart, CEO of the San Diego Public Library Foundation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, my name is Patrick Stewart. I am the CEO of the San Diego Public Library Foundation, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of us, and by all of us, I do mean the entire city of San Diego, and in fact, the entire region, to Misty and all of our librarians. You know, what you just heard Misty give you an update on just barely scrapes the surface on the incredible work that our library and our librarians do to provide leadership in this community every single day. And we are very, very grateful. I want to take a quick minute to give you a brief update on some foundation happenings. But first, I'd like to recognize trustees, Library Foundation trustees, both past and present, that are with us here this evening. I want to thank you also for your years of dedication and service. And if you are a trustee, past or present, please do drop your name and a hi in the chat so that we can virtually thank you and send a high five your way. One of the things that I think that most people are very aware of at this point is one of our biggest priorities in the last year, probably 18 months at this point, is the development of the new library master plan. And pleased to report that phase 1 framework has been complete and will be scheduled for City Council review and adoption in late January, early February. We were able to complete this with the input of over 8,000 San Diegans through a series of focus groups, a community survey, multiple community presentations, and a public comment period. And what it really does is it speaks volumes to what the library means to each of us in our communities, and how important it is, that we lend our voice to the future direction of the library. And so there will be ample opportunity to do more of that through subsequent phases and completions of the final part of the library master plan. So with the completion of the master plan framework, it was very clear that, like I said, every San Diegan deserves access to quality public spaces, and that San Diegans see libraries as essential, safe, strong, and thriving communities. Along with our partners at the Parks Foundation, we are pleased to announce the launch of the Library and Parks Investment Act of 2022, a community-led citizens initiative to improve San Diego's libraries and parks. This measure, scheduled to be on the November 2022 ballot, if passed, will provide a permanent restricted revenue source for libraries and parks that will be protected from the political discretion of elected officials. And this measure will benefit our entire community by providing funding for things like rehabilitating and modernizing aging facilities, renewing emphasis on communities that have not benefited from recent expansions or construction, educational programs, expanded access to technology and digital services, enriching the arts and expanding library materials and recreation programming, and importantly, supporting the operations that are needed to provide world-class library and park services. The Library and Parks Investment Act of 2022 was developed, like I said, by a diverse, nonpartisan group of San Diego residents who believe that safe, quality public spaces are essential to the health, safety, and overall quality of life in our community. This citizen-led measure will provide a guaranteed local funding source through a modest 2 cents per square foot parcel fee that's capped at 1 acre and provides exclusions for certain low-income, senior, and disability housing. It will raise an estimated $45 million per year and will cost a 5,000 square foot San Diego parcel just $100 per year, or approximately $8.30 or so cents per month. And the ability to spend the funds on these priorities that are outlined in the 2 departments' master plans will be accompanied by very, very strict oversight. And we're going to be able to continue to provide updates and details on this measure as they continue to develop. I want to invite you to save the date, January 12th. The Library Foundation will be hosting a virtual watch party for the mayor's State of the City address. If you joined us last year, you know what to expect. We will be sending out invitations and details to that very soon. But in the meantime, just wanted to make sure that you save the date. The mayor just announced, I believe it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, January 12th in the evening for the State of the City address that we will host a library-centric watch party. And finally, 2022 marks the Library Foundation's 20th anniversary. 20 years of creating community and innovation. As many of you know, 20 years ago, the Library Foundation was formed in large part to secure the philanthropic support to build the new Central Library. And since then, our focus has been on the equitable distribution of library resources and programs across the city. So throughout 2022, we will be excited to invite you to celebrate the role that your Library Foundation and your support in helping lead your public library. We will be able to celebrate that throughout the year. We'll be able to give you more details on that as they arise as well. Now, I would like to invite our guests to join us on our virtual stage. Val Hardie, Emily Derry, and Bonnie Domingos to introduce themselves and begin a conversation about the work that they do leading our library system.
Good evening. My name is Val Hardie, and I am the Literacy Program Administrator for the San Diego Public Library. We are a program that recruits volunteers who in turn help adults build basic reading, writing, and math skills.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Emily Derry. I'm the Youth and Engagement Coordinator for the San Diego Public. I work out of the beautiful Central Library downtown, but I support youth programs at all of our 36 locations. Some examples of programs that I help coordinate are the Summer Reading Program, the upcoming Winter Reading Challenge, and 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten.
Good evening, I'm Bonnie Domingos. I run and manage the visual arts program here for San Diego Public Library. So I work again at the Central Joan and Irwin Jacobs Art Gallery on the 9th floor, as well as manage some rotating community exhibitions at 18 of our branch locations. So yeah, nice to be here this evening.
Fantastic. Well, Val, Emily, and Bonnie, thank you so much for joining us and being able to take a little bit of time to share what you do with our audience this evening. I want to get started with a question for each of you, and maybe Val, you can start with the answer, but I was hoping that you could share a story from one of the patrons that you work with or your program supports that best exemplifies the impact that your program has on our community.
Patrick, there are so many stories that I could tell you that demonstrate the impact. One that stands out in my mind is the story of a husband and wife team. We had a volunteer tutor that met with a husband and wife team at the Malcolm X Library. But prior to meeting with that tutor, that husband and wife team, the mom started in our family literacy program, bringing her kids who at that time were under 5. And the kids grew up in the family literacy program. The parents grew up supporting their kids, working on their reading and writing skills. Those kids went on to be valedictorians at Gompers Prep School, and then went on to get a full ride scholarship at UCLA. And the daughter is now in medical school. So that is a prime example of changing the trajectory of how that family walks around in the community, all because of reading, all because of this parent seeing this resource at the library and deciding that she wanted to make a difference for her kids and for herself and for her family's business. Both parents got involved because he had a landscaping business, needed help with paperwork and writing bids, and they were able to improve their writing skills so that they could help in their business and help their kids, and just with phenomenal impact in that family alone.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and because of the literacy program, that child who is now in medical school wants to give back. And that's why she went into medical and through the medical profession in the first place. And she will always credit libraries for that start and that love of reading.
That's fantastic, Val. Thank you. Bonnie?
Yeah, the project that comes to mind back in February before COVID changed the world, we had opened this exhibition called Fear No Art, Civic Engagement, Histories and Currencies. And this was really an interesting show because we had paired works from the Civic Art Collection with local contemporary artists. And so this was a really important show. We hit on notions of, race, gender, political, identity. It was a very political show, and we were so excited. And we had no idea, the trajectory we were on. So we opened the show. It was only open for, I think, a month and a half, and then COVID hit and it was closed down. But during that curatorial process, we really got to take a really good look at that collection. And what we realized was, wow, there is so many gaps, not only in artistic practice, but also centering artists from diverse backgrounds, right? That collection was really lacking. So in a long way, that exhibition really allowed that investigation to happen. And although we didn't get to share with the community the way we wanted to, for us, it really that investigation led us, and which eventually led to the Commission for Arts and Culture SD Practice Initiative. And that was launched in the middle of the pandemic in 2021, which we just wrapped up. But that enabled the city. They were bequeathed a large donation from a local gentleman who was an art collector who really felt strongly about the arts. He believed in the arts. He wanted more access to public art, and he left us a large endowment. And we basically were allowed to take that endowment and purchase works from 100 local artists. It was actually 100 works from 89 San Diegan artists during the pandemic, which for them, in terms of their labor, everything was shut down. There was no economy for visual artists at that time, or just more artists in general. So that initiative was really well money spent. It not only supported local artists here in the creative economy that creates, but it also strategically was well thought out, and it really centered and brought in works from people of color, from people from diverse backgrounds, and also, just from, artistic practice side, it also filled in that collection with works that we hadn't had prior. So that was one of the tremendous impacts, just, from, having exposure to the visual arts here within the library. So
that Fear No Art exhibit remains one of my favorite exhibits in any gallery in easily the last 5 years. I think that it was one of the most important things. I still have all of this stuff up here on my wall. I do want to get to COVID, and I do want to get to Emily really quickly, but one of the things that I noticed that you did do during the pandemic, when we were locked out of our spaces, was to create a series of sort of curatorial conversations with some of the curators that were virtual, that were a part of that exhibit. And I think that, that was perhaps for someone like me, who really appreciates art and people who want to learn more about art. It was just an opportunity to get further insight into the curators' minds, your minds, the thought about the exhibit. And it's probably, I don't know, I've never talked to you about this, but it's probably, I don't know if it was planned to have done that live if we weren't in the pandemic, but it was sort of a happy byproduct, being able to spend a little time with you in the afternoon in a conversation, that you were having with the curators. So thank you for that exhibit. It's, again, one of my favorites in the last 5 years easily. Emily.
Too.
Sure. Yeah. I'm kind of building on what Val was talking about earlier about building that love of reading, that foundation of love of reading. We recently had a parent reach out to us who had signed their child up for the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program a while back, and they had completed it. So they had read 1,000 books they had shared 1,000 books before kindergarten with their parent. And this parent was telling us that she attributes her 6-year-old strong reading skills to the program. So at this age, he's already reading chapter books, and she believes that the program helped build his love of reading. And so I think that this really captures that, you know, these reading, the impact that these reading programs have on our families. They give families the tools to establish a routine and, you know, encouraging them along the way to create a book-rich environment for their little ones. You know, and making it fun and rewarding them along the way, which helps to give the child that positive experience with reading. And as they're coming into the library and they're wearing their badges of honor as they go through the 1,000 books before kindergarten, they're, you know, showing up at the story times and they're marking more books on their list from story times, and just, you know, keeping that relationship with the library strong. So we hear stories like this as children are now, you know, we've been doing it for a few years now, and so we've been hearing stories as children are finishing up, and just how the families are so, you know, proud to sort of create that routine of reading that will now last them through their childhood.
That is so fantastic. I always find it difficult to ask a librarian to tell me one story. You know, and I think one of the joys of my work in the foundation and our other foundation colleagues is that we get the opportunity to communicate these stories from you to our supporters, your supporters, and the public, and corporations and foundations and individuals who may not be privy to some of these individual stories. And I just know, you know, that there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of stories like this that we can expand upon. Val, I want to start with you, if you don't mind. You know, the library, and for our guests this evening, you know, the library supports, under your leadership, a variety of literacy programs. And I know that you've been doing this work for a long time through the library, and being able to see how literacy development evolves and the way that we approach literacy development, and literacy development particularly outside of the traditional academic setting. Could you talk a little bit about how you've seen that evolve and how you've seen libraries adapt to that evolvement, and to the way that it evolves, and sort of, you know, how you implement and put some of those changes into place so that we're continuing to meet young people and adults' needs where they're at?
Well, I see that the library is a resource, an educational resource for folks from the cradle to the grave. And certainly we have little ones in our family literacy programs, adults who range in age from 17 up to 85, who are there to build basic reading and writing skills. Over the years, we started as a library literacy program. We expanded to provide workplace literacy for those people who wanted to gain the skills they needed to be successful at work. We've implemented a computer lab that has software to help folks with basic keyboarding, as well as learning basic searching strategies and just demystifying technology. Because we have students that in our program who don't have devices, don't have access to the internet, and are mystified by technology, and some who may have devices but are mystified by technology. So I think our program has worked to meet that need by providing students with devices, showing them how to use them, and all the while helping to build reading and writing skills as well too. The library also has worked to provide an opportunity to get a high school diploma through the Curator Online High School Diploma Program. And that has been just a rich resource for students, not just enrolled in the adult literacy program, but those outside of the program. I can think of folks that were working on their GED, but then when they saw the opportunity to get a high school diploma, they ditched that for the opportunity. I mean, they just ditched the GED for the opportunity to get a high school diploma, because they felt that it carried more weight and meat in the community, and that employers looked at it as being more substantive. I hope that gets at some of your questions.
It does, and I'm glad that you brought up the Career Online High School program. That's a popular program, and it's an easy program to sort of be able to visualize, you know, what the effect of and the impact of your programs has on a particular population. Even though we experienced the pandemic, even though for much of the last 2 years we've been away from our spaces, you were still able to graduate, what, 2 cohorts of students this fall, like 34 students, 36 students or something, as we were able to finally get together in person. They walked across the stage, the Morgan Auditorium. How did that happen?
It happened because the students were committed to continuing despite the challenge of not being able to meet in person. Career Online High School is unique because folks can continue to work online, although there were students that were attempting to do their coursework on their mobile phones, and the Library Foundation stepped up to meet that challenge by providing laptops for students that didn't have devices. And so that student who was working on her phone got a laptop and was able to graduate because on time because of that tech support, of that device support. And the pandemic was a challenge for everyone, even more scary and challenging if you are a low literate adult who can't read the newspaper or read material from your doctor's office or read emails. So the library was a tremendous resource, a saving grace for so many people. I think about volunteer tutors who decided that, you know what, I'm going to stay connected to my students. So throughout California, there are a number of programs that shut down, that did not provide tutoring service during the pandemic. We were not one of those folks. We figured out a way to support folks who wanted to continue. And we did so by supporting people in using Zoom, supporting folks who used FaceTime, phone calls. Some even did letter writing to stay connected to each other. But most did Zoom or phone calls, and that required a tremendous amount of patience and persistence on both parties, on the part of both parties. And just this Saturday, I met with a parent in our family literacy program who sort of welled up in tears saying, this family literacy program saved me. My son met the family literacy coordinator before the pandemic, but we made the pivot to providing virtual family literacy programs on YouTube and promoting it online. And families would tune in each month, rehearse the sounds of the alphabet, read books with our family literacy coordinator, and engaged in craft activities. And this parent said that my son has a love of reading because of his connection to those virtual programs. So whether in person or virtual, libraries make a profound difference in the lives of adults as well as kids.
I love hearing that. I think that's something, I think the whole literacy component is something that people are pretty familiar, that libraries maybe not familiar with exactly how that happens, but making literacy and reading a priority, through the library. And I know, Emily, a lot of your programs are also designed to, with young people in mind, the youngest ones, littles in mind, to meet developing literacy needs as well. And you had mentioned the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program. Could you talk a little bit more about why it's important that young people have a strong literacy foundation before they even get to school? And sort of, some other programs that you're wrapping around the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program to ensure that kids have access.
Absolutely. Yeah. So being ready to read before kindergarten, having those skills, having those, print awareness skills. Kids don't have to be reading by kindergarten, but just being comfortable and being confident in in books and being having access to them and have that print awareness is so important. And so, and just making sure that the adults and the people in their lives are also kind of showing that, like mimicking that, like reading around them, just to have books, just that book rich environment is so important, so that they know that it's always a part of their life.
Your attention, please. The library will be closing.
All restrooms and computers will shut down in 15 minutes.
A regular scheduled closing announcement. So yeah, so kind of building on that 1,000 books before kindergarten program, we're launching a new program this year that we're really excited about, and it's called the My First Library Card program. And what this does is it encourages parents and guardians to, set their children up for life by getting them their first library card at a young age. And I think that the reason for this program is that, adults can get library cards and they can check books out to their kids with the library card, but there is a misconception that only adults can have library cards. And this initiative will kind of help clear up that confusion in a super fun and engaging way. So what we're going to be offering soon is when children come in to get their library card, they'll be met with excited staff members who will issue them a card that was designed special for them. So this is for children ages 0 to 5. And it's going to be an Odie card. And if you all haven't met Odie yet, Odie is a little character, Odie the Coyote, that we created for the library, just kind of like a fun mascot who stands for the library's vision, which is opportunity, discovery, and inspiration. And the library published a children's book based on this character who goes to the library for the first time and gets a library card and goes to a story time and checks out books related to the story, which was about kites, and then goes to the innovation lab and creates the kite and goes out and flies it with their friends. And so it kind of it emphasizes, all of the different the journey that this Odie went through with their parent, and how it sparked this interest that brought them somewhere, that gave them this opportunity to build a kite and go on. So they'll receive the book and then take a picture in a photo frame. And then as supplies last, because of generous support from the foundation, children are going to get their very own Odie plush. And I know it might seem a little strange for a library to hand out stuffed animals. It's a strategic engagement tool. And if you think about, they come into the library, they're congratulated for getting this card. They're getting these fun kind of props to use at home, the book, the doll. And then every time they play with their Odie, they take it for a ride with them in the car, share a story with Odie, they will have that fond memory of how it all began with that special day receiving their first library card. And so then that is, helping to bridge the relationship with the library, or build the relationship with the library and our dedicated staff. And, if they haven't already, sign up for the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program. And then, the librarian says, come back for story times and for these activities. And again, building that relationship is so important. So they know that the library is always going to be a resource for them.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And we've had an opportunity for a sneak peek of the Odie plush dolls, and they're adorable.
I can show it if you want to see it.
Grab one.
But I just like that from a visual art standpoint, the author of that book is a library employee and a fantastic artist. She illustrated the entire book. So I highly encourage you to check it out. Anisi Bygood.
I love that. That is the role that libraries play in our communities. I love that, all encompassed in one program. But then we had talked a little bit, you mentioned access, right? And being able to provide, the opportunity for a young person to develop a meaningful relationship with the library from a very early age. But that doesn't happen with every kid, and it doesn't happen with every family. And you and I have talked about, the fact that we've got, many young people in the San Diego Unified School System that don't have library cards for a variety of reasons, and there are barriers that exist. And I know that you're working on addressing that as well. What does that look like?
Patrick, what you're saying is sadly true. So when we ran statistics in the community in Southeast San Diego, we found that only about 35% of the students that were ages 5 to 14 had library cards, and that's just had an account. So we don't know if they're using them, if they're expired, but this is really a sobering statistic, as many of us may assume, and rightfully so, that receiving a library card in elementary school that will carry them through their school years is automatic. Like it's just a given. You're in elementary school, you're going to get a library card, you're going to go to the library after school, get the resources that you need for book reports. But the reality is that barriers exist that prevent this from happening. And one barrier is the traditional library card. The traditional library card applications. They require proof of address and a parent signature. And this application, so you can see like right away how this application can be a barrier. And like also just getting families to come into the library to apply can be a barrier. Finding the time, knowing of our services for students, knowing of our services for students, and then, you know, to get the will to come in to do it. These are all barriers. And another barrier, of course, is fear of fees for a lost book. The library has done away with fees for over late fines, but you know, lost items, if people are moving around, it can really be a hardship to lose a library item and have to pay. So so the library is currently working with San Diego Unified School District. We have a partnership to issue a special student card. It's called the Excel card, which stands for Excellence in Education and Libraries. And so our goal is to get student library cards to all San Diego Unified students by 2024. And so in this program, which is going to be made processed by data sharing with the school district, there will be no paper applications. There'll be no fines for lost items. And we will work closely with the schools to ensure that the information about the cards and library resources are getting to the students and their families. So we're really excited for that to launch, just working on some of the technical stuff right now, but we're getting there.
That is going to be a game changer for thousands of kids. I didn't know the statistic that 35% of kids in Southeast San Diego. That definitely will be a total game changer. You know, it's interesting, you know, I think
Excuse me, Patrick.
Patrick,
I would like to chime in and piggyback on Emily's point. It's a game changer for low literate adults as well too, because I can tell you I've met with many adults doing assessments, and they say they didn't grow up with books in the home. Many of the adults in our programs had parents that didn't have the literacy skills. They didn't have books. They didn't have anyone who could read to them. Going to a library had been a scary place for them prior to learning about the literacy program. So this getting the library card into the hands of kids in school is a game changer, and it's another way of bridging the gap from a different angle. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, no, I think that this is fantastic. It's going to support, you know, again, 1,000 books before kindergarten. We know how important it is developing that literacy foundation before you start school. The campaign for grade level reading. You know, one of the phrases that I mention most when we talk about, you know, the importance of literacy and reading. By the time you're in 4th grade, you're not learning to read, you're reading to learn. And if you don't have that foundation, then you will inevitably left behind. And tests and statistics absolutely prove all of that. And so to the work that the library is doing to address literacy and education and technology gaps and so on and so forth, kudos. And I think that is such an important part of the way that libraries take a leadership role in our community. But one of the things that, Bonnie, I think that a lot of people don't know about is the important role as a cultural center, a cultural hub that libraries play. And you know, and I think I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about, you know, arts education, why it's important to have, you know, an interaction with visual art. But talk a little bit more about the library itself being sort of a leadership in cultural engagement and cultural enrichment.
Yeah, I love this question because I love to advocate for libraries. I mean, it's my favorite thing to talk about. And like you said, I have so much to say. But I think really, you know, we are vital civic centers, right? I think what I like most is that there is an element of being radical, right? Because we really do answer to the community. We hear the community, we respond to their needs, you know? And there's something really radical in that, you know, in terms of, you know, connecting it by extension to visual arts, right? Like we are always moving beyond our traditional functions in the library. And I think that's what's terrific about libraries is we serve so many different needs. And, you know, from an art point of view, it's kind of a great space to kind of take in the human experience, right? We are in a place, libraries provide this space where we can really reflect, we think, we rethink, we re-envision, right? And it really lends itself to that kind of exploration. And it really opens up, you know, the ability to have a dialogue, right? And I think when we're all participating in a dialogue and we're communicating, right, in some way, shapes, or forms, socially or culturally, we're kind of also participating in world building. And when we think about libraries, I mean, how essential have libraries been? You know, the book is just one form of an art, right? But I can't think of any other object, and by extension, libraries, you know, being an influence and a transmitter and bringing that from, you know, centuries over time. So I just think that, you know, I just love libraries. I think we're vital in the community. I think the community thinks we are spaces of vitality and opportunity, discovery, inspiration, right? And so I think, yeah, we just lend ourselves to actually being accountable and responsible to the community and the public, and we serve the public.
I think the accountability to the public and serving the public is an important point. You know, when any one of us here, any one of us in the audience, you know, comes to the library or brings a friend, a family member, a community member, we go on a tour. You know, one of the things that always stands out to people who have not been here to the Central Library or other libraries that have visual art in them is simply the vast amount of contemporary visual art. This is, I said it to someone else recently, this is a 9-story art gallery. And it really is, you know, any corner you turn, there is a masterwork there, a contemporary masterwork that's there. And one of the things that I hear from people is they remark on particularly the exhibitions that you curate and lead in the gallery upstairs is how culturally inclusive they are. And, you know, when you talk about, you know, being accountable to the community, you know, that cultural inclusivity is very important. And can you talk a little bit about how some of that is, you know, how you weave together your shows and, you know, and maybe a little bit about the Clara Breed show that's there now when you want to talk about the way, you know, that libraries lead the way, cultural inclusivity, and then the ability to walk into a physical space and just be hit with the gravity of what that exhibit means as a starting point for dialogue about, you know, our role as human beings and our accountability to one another. I think that like that encompasses everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Central Library alone, I mean, it begins with the simple mission is that, you know, we as a civic institution believe that exposure to the arts needs to happen to the public on the daily. And Central is really representative of that. There's 150 artworks on view at Central all the time during operating hours. So you are able to walk every floor and see over 150 pieces of that civic art collection. So it's a different interaction the public has the ability of with fine art. You know, we're not a museum. We're not under high security. You know, we're not, you know, tied to our collection in certain more traditional roles. So the art is for the public. It serves the public. And so just that alone, when you come into the building, then you come up to the 9th floor and you see, you mentioned the Clara Breed. Mm-hmm. And forgive me, but there was another point before you were asking me about in terms of how we curate our shows and how do we ensure cultural inclusivity. So, you know, that's a big question. There's a lot to tackle there, but we work closely with an advisory committee. We've made huge strides in making that more reflective of our community. So we've brought on new advisory boards with fresh eyes, new perspectives, and having their opinions at the table. That was fundamental, is that voices had to be at that advisory committee table. The second thing we've done is really in terms of our strategy is really focusing on people who are already embedded in the community, right? So when we're talking about visual artists and having curators or community organizers who are already embedded in those
Your
communities,
attention, please.
The library.
that really is what we're interested in. We're interested in working with those people and opening up our spaces to bring those people in to tell those stories. And so rather than me try to recreate this footwork and connections, we're reaching out to the people who are already embedded and working with those visual artists and other community leaders, creative groups that are already there and already have those relationships. And then by opening up our spaces, we're allowing for more dialogues that are more reflective of the community. And Clara Breed is a prime example of that, right? So that was more historical. That was something we hadn't done in the past, right? When we're focused more on contemporary, but it was a wonderful project to work on because, you know, it really allowed us to kind of take this journey and present this journey to the public, to where the public could really kind of go through that traumatic experience, right? And have that moment. And like, we're reflecting on that traumatic experience that this particular sect of community had. And we're talking through it, and we're putting context to it with, you know, what libraries were doing at the time, and how Clara Breed was such an advocate through not only her profession, but and her personal life, right? So that was on full display. And so Clara Breed and the overall project with the lectures, the workshops, I mean, I can't tell you how many people come into the gallery. We've had descendants of people who were in the internment camps come to the show and say, hey, you know, Elizabeth Kikuchi, who was featured in one of the letter writers in the show, her aunt had babysat someone, I'm forgetting the line there, but it was, you know, we hear these connections all the time, that she was babysat by this person in the camps, or they knew Clara Breed. Clara Breed was their librarian when they came to the library, and we're still getting those stories. So it's just had a tremendous impact.
I wasn't intending on doing this, but I do want to do a quick sales pitch for the exhibit. I know that many of the other lectures and the films and stuff like that have wrapped up. And in fact, I think tonight is one of the final, I believe it's a film, but there's information on the San Diego Public Library's website. But the exhibit remains up through the end of next month, right?
Yes, January 30th, it closes, so you have plenty of time.
I cannot encourage people enough to go and see this again, you know, when I think that's the beauty of art, right? You know, aesthetic, it's something sort of aesthetically just different and distanced from yourself can still ignite a very important feeling and conversation. And I remember at the opening, you and I are having conversations that despite the fact that the exhibit itself references something that happened 80 years ago, in many of our communities, we're still having these same conversations, you know, and putting people in silos and creating us versus them. And the exhibit, you know, does a really great job of allowing us to experience that from a historical perspective, but also reminds us, you know, that we have some work to do on ourselves currently, and the library serves as a platform to be able to do that. So I can't emphasize enough, this is a really important exhibit to please go and see. I do want to be able to save a few minutes for some Q&A, and so if any of you in the audience want to put some questions for our guests in the Q&A section on the bottom of your Zoom screen, please do so, and I will be able to ask them that. But I do want to ask two more things. You know, one, I don't think that we can get away from a conversation about the role, the leadership role that libraries have played in our community without addressing, again, the pandemic. And I think we've heard a couple of stories, you know, about how some programs have been able to shift. You know, what does that look like for you all going forward? Again, what I mean is some of the shifts that you've made have opened up access and opportunity for communities to engage in different ways. Is this something that you will continue to employ? Digital technology, virtual technology, things that you've learned from having to pivot during the pandemic, and you know, what does some of that look like? Emily, I'll
I
start
can,
with
yeah,
you.
sure, I can go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, the pandemic has been really challenging for libraries, I think, because what we do, whether helping people find books or leading library programs, is so like hands-on and personal. And when COVID hit, like we immediately had to cancel all of our in-person programs. And, we weren't able to bring them back until fairly recently. And one way that our librarians and myself have adapted was to create, a virtual space, a virtual hub online where staff from all of the library locations contributed to an online sort of schedule of programming. There were like live videos and there were recorded videos so people could watch them anytime. And we had like a schedule of events that were happening daily for, from preschoolers all the way up to adults. So that was really great. And we were excited about that. And we were getting pretty good engagement. And then we started to think about, we noticed that like the challenge that we were having is that we were assuming, or maybe we weren't assuming, but we can assume that the families and the kids at home have the supplies that they need to do some of the things that we were doing in our videos. So we were showing them how to do like STEM activities or arts and crafts, along with, a story or whatever. We were having adults kind of create programs. And we were, families may not have some of the things, like they might not have them handy, a glue stick or construction paper or, LED batteries if it's something, with circuitry. So we quickly started making activity kits. We started making craft kits and activity kits for adults and STEM kits. And we began handing them out at our pickup locations. And also at offsite locations like school meal distribution sites. So when families were coming to their local school to pick up their lunches, we would be there handing out activity kits during the summer. We heard a lot of parents express gratitude. I was out at one of the sites up in Mira Mesa and they were like, we just need stuff to do. And this gives us something to do. And they were just very excited. So we can't do it right there in person, but they can, do it at home at their own time. There's instructions included, but they could also in many cases, log on and do it with us in a virtual space too. So that was just one of the ways that the work that I was kind of doing, I was noticing in the libraries. So it was fun. I also wanted to just say something that I've been thinking about this pandemic on one of the programs that I feel made such a big pivot that's worth mentioning is the Do Your Homework at the Library program. Because, normally they have homework help sites at our branches and like homework centers, which they had to close down. And so they created Zoom spaces where kids could virtually come in and get homework help with the volunteers and the tutor learner coordinators. And we found that the managers and the tutors learned that a lot of kids were showing up that never went to a homework center before because they weren't able to access the building. They weren't able to get there after school. They weren't able to walk there. They weren't able to get a ride. And here now they can just log in from anywhere and get the help that they need. So this has been one of those silver linings of now we know that this is important and having this virtual space can really, be useful for somebody. And I know a lot of us, we roll our eyes like we're getting sick of, the virtual space, but it's really, I think it's going to be a game changer in other ways that maybe we didn't think was possible.
I think we're going to see a lot of industries, not the least of which libraries, taking some lessons from how they were able to adapt and pivot. And eye rolls aside, you're creating access. It's removing barriers. It's creating engagement, and all of that means a better community. We're more connected. Val, I'm sure you are implementing some of the new technology things that you've had to do with your programs going forward. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more that it's, as Emily mentioned, it's been a silver lining. We have tutor learner pairs that had made the pivot to virtual meeting, and one person, the tutor, has health issues, and so she will continue meeting solely virtually with her student, and her student is
Your attention,
with that.
please. The library will be closing in 5 minutes. Please proceed to the exit at this time.
We have updated our learner intake and tutor intake applications to ask to screen more questions about technology, and ensure that after they, well, in our program, learners call up to hear about the program, they then go to an orientation, and they then do a one-on-one assessment. At that, and after that one-on-one assessment, we are now sort of making the shift to technology classes for those students, so that they not only are building their reading skills, but they are building their tech skills as well.
That's fantastic. You know, one of the most important things that we learned from the year and a half of putting together the phase 1 framework for the master plan, not only from all of you librarians, but also from the thousands and thousands of San Diegans who stepped up to, you know, answer some questions about the way that the library both served them pre-pandemic, is serving them now, and what they expect to see going forward. Technology was one of the key issues that was brought up, either, like you're saying, being able to connect to library services virtually, like what you said, Emily, not being able to get to a building for whatever reason. You've removed some of those barriers. And then, you know, again, Bonnie, like I said, you know, it was really great for me to be able to tune in and get an insight I otherwise would not have been able to with the curators that you brought on for Fear No Art. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, and one of them actually kind of hinges on, or it's kind of aligned with what my last question for you all was going to be before we did a Q&A. So Bonnie, we'll start with you, but if each of you, it's the best way to say this. If money were no object, is there an initiative, you know, either programmatically or physically? What would you like to do were money not an issue? Bonnie?
Not an issue. I think what comes to mind first would be to work with more creative local groups here and offer more in-person kind of hands-on community arts programming that is happening at the branches. So if money was no object, there'd be programs at all 36 branch locations specific to the arts, hands-on, all ages programming. Yes, absolutely.
I love it. Val, what would you do?
If there was a money tree, I would direct resources to market the library and the wonderful resources that are here, because staff is so focused on delivering the service that we're stretched in terms of, you know, having boots on the ground to get the word out to the people who need the help.
Emily?
That was a good one.
That's a good one.
Service awareness, I feel like, is such a challenge. So Val said that one, so I'll say something else, but that was really good. So I guess what I would love to see would be a dedicated space in every library for very young children. A space that is like interesting to little ones, you know, educational in a gentle way, but also fits the needs of the parents and the caregivers. So like maybe a computer station nearby so they can, you know, work on whatever they need to work on while their child is safely playing around them. And, you know, a nursing chair could be there too. Because I know that we're doing better at this and building these more into like our newer libraries. I think that, and I hear this from people, I think that some parents still think of the library as this like quiet haven, and they worry that their little ones are going to be too loud and they won't feel welcome. And so kind of going along with what Val said about like service awareness is that like, if we could provide that space at every library and somehow do a big media push and let young parents know that like these spaces are there and what they look like and what's available there, and that it's a welcoming environment for everyone, I think we could change that misconception. Because I just think, you know, I've had a friend tell me like, oh, I don't bring my kids there because they're going to be so crazy. And I'm like, no, it's okay, be crazy.
That would be beautiful. That would be absolutely beautiful. And of course, we're joined by our esteemed leader. We can't let you off the hook. Money is no object.
Oh my gosh, it's a dream. It's a dream. So there's a few things that I of course, there's always
Your
this.
attention, please. The
Good
library is now
Lord,
closed.
Sherwood, when is the library actually closing?
I get a mute
Um,
for that.
So the one thing that I really, really do want to do, and this is kind of going back to what Emily was talking with the do your homework at the library, is I do think that we need one in every single branch. And I think that we need to also continue that virtual option for that and have a hybrid model. It's so important. And the reason is it's not only about the homework assistance, but we've seen it at branches where, particularly San Ysidro is one that I use as an example all the time, is, you know, at first the parents were bringing their kids and dropping them off, and then they were sitting in the parking lot, and then they eventually started to come into the library and participate and check out books and talk to each other and, you know, join book clubs. And so we have such an opportunity with that to reach the entire family. And I'd love to see an idea lab in every location. And I really, really, really think that we need to do a better job, and we're working on this as well, but we need to do a better job at engaging the community for people with disabilities. Engaging children with autism and their parents, their caregivers, and really, really reaching out and having something in every location for those patrons with, you know, different needs, and we need to be able to meet those needs.
Absolutely. This has been I just looked at the time. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I feel like we can have the conversation for another 2 hours and still barely touch the surface. Scrape the surface of all the amazing stuff that you all do. Misty, since I've got you, maybe you can answer the last question. What are you most looking forward to at San Diego Public Library in 2022?
Having every location open back to pre-pandemic levels of hours. That is what I'm looking forward to. I am looking forward to getting back to the services the awesome service that we've always offered, and getting back to that, and then seeing where we go next. You know, what changes in our service model, but we've got to get every location back open.
Yeah,
that's number one priority.
Well, that it will mean the world to a lot of the communities that aren't able to access their branches in a variety of ways. So we're right there with you. All of you, I want to thank you so much for such a great conversation. I am perpetually amazed on a daily basis at the amazing work that you all do. Again, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, you know, and I'm pleased to say, and I'm not alone in saying this, you know, we see the transformation in our community by having, you know, quality library services. And we see it in our schools, we see it with our kids, we see it with our families, the young people that are looking for jobs, and seniors that are connecting, and cultural engagement and everything. And I just can't, from all of us who live to support what you all are doing, thank you very much. Now I want to introduce my colleague, Natalie Gans, to help us begin wrapping this up.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to all of our speakers and to you for moderating such a wonderful discussion. And thanks to all of our guests for joining us tonight to celebrate the library impact that they all help to support, we all help to support. And to learn more about the impact of the library and the Library Foundation, please visit our website, supportmylibrary.org. And that is also where you can make a gift to support this work. On that note, I do have a special announcement that thanks to a very generous $100,000 challenge grant from the Lilly Lai Foundation, any gift that our guests make will be matched and will go twice as far to uplift the community. As we explained in the program announcement, we invited everyone to enjoy their celebratory drink of choice during this program. I've got my grapefruit sparkling water in a library shop glass, one of my favorite glasses that I have. And I'd like to invite all of the other speakers to come back on screen with me. And once everybody's up, there we go. Invite everyone, our guests at home, our guests on the screen, to raise a glass to all that was accomplished during this challenging year, to welcome the year to come. As Patrick mentioned earlier, 2022 will mark the Library Foundation's 20th anniversary of supporting the San Diego Public Library. So here's to another year of opportunity, discovery, and inspiration, and another year when, as Misty said, the library can be a light for people.
Cheers.
Amen.
Cheers.
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 Thank you all for joining us this evening. Like I said, we'll be sending out some information about some other programs that are happening early in the year. And with that, please have a wonderful rest of your holiday season and a very happy new year. And we will see you in 2022.